Okay. All right. We are on. So
Yeah,
you should have a nice, pretty blue screen in front of you now.
we do
Uh,
indeed.
we are moving on through. We are in week 17, counting the two weeks that we skipped, or not counting them. So yeah, we had to skip on by, but we're catching up. So that's good stuff. But to kind of start off, a phrase that came to my mind was a rising tide lifts all boats. And we've been talking about developing the habit of simply making our beds. I was actually going back through some of Dr. Wayne's uh, posts last night, and I stumbled across one from last summer where he actually posted Admiral McRaven making a part of his speech where he talked about if you want to change the world, start by making your bed. And I thought, hey, that's pretty good stuff. I'm on the right page. So, but we're, and it seems like a very simple thing, but we've been exploring how there's a lot to it. So hopefully we are still getting up in the morning and honestly, there are times when I don't want to do it, but no, I've got to do it because I'm getting other people to commit to it. So I've got to be an example myself, even if they're not looking at it. Um, so we're working on developing that habit because we're expecting other things to happen, but. Uh, One thing that we need to keep in mind, if each one does his or her part, everybody else is better off. You know, if I'm lifting up my little part piece of the tide, then the boat's going to float. If we're all working together, if everybody's doing his and her due, the atmosphere is better. Okay. So we're doing it not only just for ourselves because it really builds some things in us, but we're doing it for one another. We're creating a better atmosphere, and we're doing it for God's kingdom because it creates a witness and a testimony for Him in terms of the disciplines and the integrity in our lives. So we still doing that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Um, I shared at the very beginning and brought it up a little bit along the way, but a leader, I think, has four core responsibilities. And I even personally would tell you that if you're doing more than these four, you may be doing too much. But definitely, if you're not doing these four, then you're not doing what's really most important. And the first one we talked about, I brought up again last week, was to cast vision. The second one is to build culture. And so creating culture is a huge part of creating a culture within the organization. It helps us to understand who and what the organization is. And the simple things like making a bed can be part of that. Um, but we invest in those responsibilities. But and building the culture is what we want to talk about today. Um, Ken Wilcox, who was the CEO of Silicon Valley Bank for several years and really built it up from essentially a startup into the major banking force behind Silicon Valley in the United States, is where all the high tech stuff is. And you built it into really an important force in the whole tech industry. Uh, everybody in the technology industry was using that bank, um, and he's kind of was the engine behind that. And some of these things I've talked about, the four responsibilities, are things I kind of got from him. He's also a very godly man, and since he retired, he coaches CEOs in how to live their faith in their business. And he really is a good example for us. But he said, in my view, culture almost always trumps strategy. And the kind of point that he's after is people talk a lot about strategy. And I've heard a lot of people say it's all about strategy. You get the strategy right and everything else kind of falls in place. But Wilcox and some other very, very important business leaders have said that no, culture really is the most important thing. A good strategy is no good without a culture to put it in place and work it out. But a culture can kind of help develop the strategy too. So without a strong positive culture, strategies are not going to work very well. So,
Yeah.
and we've all been in different organizations, different groups here and there throughout our lives. Tell me about some of the cultures in the different organizations that you've been part of? Some that you worked well, some that didn't work so well, things that you liked or didn't like. Just talk to me a little bit about cultures in companies or organizations you've been part of.
Oh, yeah. I used to work for quite a big builder, one of the top 25 developers in Australia. And they were really big on having a work-life balance culture.
Hmm.
So if you took your 4 weeks of annual leave every year, they would actually give you an extra 2 weeks of annual leave. If you
Wow.
took a 4 week holiday off in one go, you could actually have 6 weeks off, which was quite good actually. Yeah, and so they were very big on work-life balance, and plus they had a lot of structure and support built around that through outsourcing it and having other people come in, third parties, and we do courses and things like that, leadership courses and you know that have preventive measures put in place. The construction industry has like a very high rate of suicide in Australia through men,
Wow.
and so they would have like mates for construction and people would come in and you do a day course and you'd be constantly doing refresher courses, refreshing on material handling, refreshing. Everyone had to have a first aid, occupational first aid certificate, and there were certain um, things that everyone had to have and had to do. You know, but the most important thing was the work-life balance in the company, which I thought was quite good.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and the time off as well. We used to get an RDO every 2 weeks as well. But the hours weren't your normal 8 hour day. You'd be working 10 hours a day,
Uh-huh.
and so that was the balance of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Plus pay increases every 6 months as well. And they would
Interesting.
do that according to the inflation with the price of everything going up and that.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so all their projects were long-term projects. So you'd be on the one project for 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
And so that created stability and yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. So,
very, very
yeah,
good company. Very safety conscious.
sounds like they understood that the employees are what made the company go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, good deal. That's a great example. Um, and I've been in organizations that had good cultures. I've been in organizations that had really bad cultures, where people just complained all day long, and they just didn't like going there. But it was a job. I had to go put in my 8, hit the gate. And so and honestly, there's a big difference in working for somebody you like and for in a place you don't enjoy being. Um, so thanks. Uh, Another one that I think is really helpful is the idea of a stitch in time saves nine. Uh, One key, and we've talked about this before, one key for good leadership and management is to kind of get in front of problems, get in front of issues, and stop them before they ever start. Kind of when there are things that you can prevent them. When you're planting a garden or something, you treat the soil first. You plow it, you turn it, you tend the soil before you plant, and so to prevent a lot of problems when you're trying to grow crops. So weeds don't choke out the crop so much, and the nourishment and the water can get to the seed and so forth. So if we tend our crops, which is tending our organizations, then we can prevent a lot of problems. Now, from people don't often understand how well leaders and managers are doing their job if they do this because the people don't really know what didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, just like he was talking about a lot of suicide in the construction industry, people who aren't familiar with that idea will go to work for a company like that and say, "Wow, this is really nice," and not realize that the employees are not committing suicide. They just think everything's going fine because it's a great place to be and there's nice people or whatever, and they pay us well and so on. But they don't stop and think, "Wow, on these other companies, there's a high rate of suicide." It just doesn't cross their mind. They don't think about safety problems that don't happen because they're safety conscious. They don't think about the injuries that don't happen. They don't think about the burnout and the distress that doesn't happen. They don't think about the high rate of absenteeism and turnover that doesn't happen because the leaders and managers have done a good job of putting things in place that keep that from being a problem in the first place. Okay. And they just know it's a good place to be. And so that's really an important kind of thing. And a culture in an organization can prevent all kinds of problems. It can really get in the way of motivational problems, attendance problems, disciplinary problems. My own idea is that about 90% of disciplinary problems, and I'm just spitballing, but 85% of motivation can be addressed if we have a strong positive culture. We don't have to stop and tell people how to do what they do and what to do and everything else continually because they understand based upon a positive culture how they fit and what they do and how to get things done and how to work together, how to cooperate, what the expectations are, what the goals are, because we've created an atmosphere that communicates those things already. And people, if it's a good culture, they'll buy into it and identify with the organization without us having to try to push them like a herd of goats all the time. Um, so, uh, great scripture I want to throw in here. I plead with you, brethren, by the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that you all speak the same thing. There be no divisions among you, but that you be perfectly joined together in the same mind and in the same judgment. Okay. Which is a great description of a positive culture in an organization. This is a positive culture in a church that Paul's trying to put in place. Culture can bring unity, but it takes planning from the leadership to put it in place, to make it happen. Um, it takes consistency to put in place. That's one reason why making our beds every day is a good thing to do because it helps us to have consistent patterns and do things consistently. So, uh, a good culture, a positive, strong culture is absolutely essential for Christian groups in order to walk in unity. Okay. Now we all know lots and lots of scriptures about that, but we just need to understand that what we're doing is creating an atmosphere that brings about unity, that brings about no divisions. Now, honestly, if you've done a good job, people will never stop and think about, hey, there's no divisions here. It just never, it never pops up on the radar because there's nothing to feed the division. And every once in a while, somebody may pop up and try to do their own little thing, but good leadership's gonna you know put a stop to that before it starts getting infectious in the organization. So the same mind, the same judgment is a great description of what culture, what an organization culture is. Um, Kind of along those lines, behold how good and pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. Like the oil on the head running down the beard of Aaron running down to the edge of his garments. It just feels good, doesn't it? It's just smooth. It's just warm. It's like the dew of Hermon descending on the mountain of Zion. There, the Lord commanded the blessing. In that environment where there's unity, in that environment where there's harmony, in that environment that Paul was talking about, that's where the blessing can be. So what culture is, to kind of put it in a nuts and bolts thing for us, it's when everybody shares the same basic beliefs, values, the perspective, the vision, attitudes, the standards of the organization. That's what creates when everybody's agreeing on those things, that's a strong culture. Um, Culture you can talk about like a loose group of shared meanings. So different companies, different organizations, different groups will have different cultures, and what things are important to them will change based upon who they are, what they do, and so on. But people kind of come to terms on this is who we are. This is what we do. And those kinds of things that they think about, those kinds of things that are part of that or can be part of who are we? As an organization, who are we? Are we an evangelistic organization? Are we a church? Are we a food service, or all those things together under a larger umbrella? Um, so who are we? Are we a construction company? Are we a big construction company, a small construction company? Um, are we a welding organization? What kind of welding do we specialize in? What kind of industry do we serve? How do we work together? Are we very cooperative together? It's a very collegial, collaborative situation, or does everybody have their specialties and we let people kind of flourish in the area that they're best at? What are our expectations for each other? How do we get along? Do people encourage one another? Do people support one another? If I see that I can help you, do I help you, or do I let you go wing it on your own? What are our work standards? Some organizations are known for high quality work. Other organizations are known for high efficiency, getting a lot of things done quickly. And so the different kinds of standards, both are fine. There's a place for both of them, but who are you? And so when people understand that, then they're kind of everybody's on the same page. And when you understand that, then you don't have to talk about it all the time. You don't have to kind of figure it out. How ethical are we? What are our ethical standards? And that's honestly something churches and ministry organizations oftentimes don't bother to talk about and clear it up. Well, how ethical are we? How often will we tolerate? Where are the lines in terms of conflicts of interest that we'll put up with? There actually shouldn't be any. We should just nip that stuff in the bud because that's a crack for the adversary to cause problems. Um, how stable are things? And he's talking about construction company that were with 2 and 3 year projects and so on. There's a lot of stability there. And as he mentioned, instead of the construction I did, we were 3 to 6 to 9 months or so on a job, and so it was bouncing from one to another consistently. And honestly, I like that. But uh, so what? How does that work for us? Who are we? What do we do? Is it a safe place to be? And then he was talking about feeling like it was a safe place. They focused on safety, but he was also what I was hearing him talk about not only physical safety in terms of avoiding injuries, which is really important in construction. I can tell you that. I've been there, okay? But is it a safe place emotionally? Do I feel like if I have a problem one day I'm not going to get called on the carpet for it? If I voice an opinion that somebody else doesn't like, am I going to get in trouble for it? Okay. Or are people going to listen to me and are people going to forgive my mistakes? Is it a safe place emotionally where I feel like where there's acceptance for me? And so forth. There's just a whole lot of things that are part of that. Do we focus on outcomes or processes? Uh, is the process for ministry organization, a lot of times the processes are very important, especially in a church. You don't really talk about outcomes in church life. For evangelistic ministries, yeah. Okay. You've got the processes that are really critical that produce the outcomes, but the outcomes are something you pay attention to. How many people,
Yeah.
excuse me? Okay. Um, and there's time for places for those, but people need to understand that. What's our core purpose? The more people understand are on the same page on all those kinds of things, the stronger the culture will be. And the easier it is, honestly, to lead and to make things work. You don't need as many rules and regulations that way. Okay. One of my main rules for me was don't have a rule unless you absolutely need it. And if you do, enforce it. Okay. And so, and the bigger you get and the weaker the culture, the more you have to have rules. and regulations to guide what people do. The stronger the culture, the less you need to have those rules to guide what people do, which honestly, that's my own personal preference. Um, Culture is like the personality of your organization. It guides how it acts. It's the atmosphere of an organization. I'm kind of giving you some big picture views of we're actually talking about here. Now, one thing about it, I said it's the atmosphere, like the atmosphere. Now, when we're talking about atmosphere, whose domain is the atmosphere? Who's the prince of the power of the air?
Yes, that.
Yeah, okay. Culture means right up front, up top, that we need to cover our organization and the culture covered in prayer, covered in the word. Because we're not dealing just with people's brains, we're dealing with an adversary that wants to take us out. And so by creating a good culture, we've created an atmosphere that resists the adversary. Okay.
Yeah, it's good.
Um, there's a story in First Chronicles about kind of at the end of David's life, and it kind of recounts the men who came to David when he was in the cave at Ziklag, when he was kind of in exile. And some of the people who came from Benjamin, from the tribe of Benjamin, came warriors who used both right and left hands with bows and slingshots. They were it doesn't matter which side you came at, they were ready for you. And you didn't know which side they were coming from when they came at you, which is kind of scary. From Gad, people who could handle spears and shields, had faces like lions and ran from gazelles. From Manasseh, the people who defected to David when he went up against Saul. So there were some people who had a loyalty. So you had three different groups here, and kind of three different things that they were really good at. Three things that describe those different from one another. Okay. Now we're talking about all the people that were at David, and David had built a strong culture. Okay, amongst the people that were following him because they had abandoned everything to come into at the cave of Ziklag. Actually, they were the downtrodden, the weak, and the oppressed people of the land. But still, he built something out of that. But within that, there were the subcultures. Okay, so organization there can be a strong overarching culture of the organization, but within that, there can be subcultures as well, just like with Ignite. Okay. You've got the overall culture of the Ignite ministries as a whole, but you also got the evangelism ministry, you've got the food ministry, you got the tent ministries, and different kinds of things that people are involved in, and each one has its own different set of things. And actually, you got people that are moving across those boundaries, but still within those things, the focus of how you do what you do is going to be a little bit different. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or am I out to lunch?
no, that's correct.
Tell me if I'm out to lunch now. We'll circle back on it if we need to, okay? Um, so now there's another story that's kind of connected to this in First Samuel, which parallels First Chronicles, First Samuel 23. David had built a culture so strong that at the end that one day he was just kind of saying, "Man, he was in exile and said, I wish I could have a drink from the well at Bethlehem." And he almost blew it when he said that because the culture and the unity amongst his men were so strong that his three mighty men, the three cream of the crop of the people supporting him, the most powerful men he had, they risked their lives to go get a drink of water for him. Okay, they snuck in at night and brought back a cup of water from the well at Bethlehem. Um, Now, what had happened had he drunk that water? He poured it out because he said, "No, my men are more valuable. I honor the value of their lives." And so he says, "No, I'm not going to put up with subservience." But it also was a thing of saying, "No, we are all designed. God created each one of us for His own pleasure. They're not here for my pleasure." And it would have been a serious cultural problem that he would have put in place had he taken that and in a symbol to the people that they were there for his pleasure. Okay. We need to be very careful about what we do and how we do it. So he poured it out. Um, so yeah, there's the things that we do as leaders and managers are really important. Um, Another great scripture, for by one Spirit we're all baptized into one body, whether Jews, Greeks, slaves, or free, all been made to drink into one Spirit. Uh, but I want to take that a little farther. Um, if the foot should say, because I'm not a hand, I'm not the body, is it not part of the body? If the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I'm not part of the body, is it therefore not of the body? If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing? If the whole body were hearing, where would the smelling be? But now God has set the members, each one of them, in the body just as he pleased, and as if were all one member, where would the body be? If we were all a nose, where would the body be? But indeed, there are many members, yet one body. Okay. We are all part of one body. We're all part of one culture. But the eye cannot say, I don't need you, and the head can't say to the feet, I don't need you. Much rather, those members of the body which seem to be weaker are necessary. Try to walk around on a hurt toe. Okay. Those members of the body which we think are less honorable, on these we bestow greater honor. Those members of the body which we think to be less honorable, uh, on these we bestow greater honor. Our unpresentable parts have greater modesty. God composed the body, having given greater honor to each part which lacks it, but there should be no schism in the body. And that's kind of what David was addressing. There should be no schisms in the body between him and his mighty men or anybody else. Okay. Um, but the members should all have the same care for one another. Now, one of the things that Paul is talking about is he's establishing a culture of harmony and cooperation. Okay, that's really what he's after here. Okay, establishing a culture of cooperation without any judgmentalism. Okay, so they're all parts of one body, but that body has its own characteristics too. All the bodies are different. Corinth was different from Galatia, which was different from from uh, from Philippi. Okay, now if we kind of take the analogy to us as individuals, as Paul's doing here, um, all the parts share in what that body is, but is it a female body? Then they're all kind of female parts. Is it a male body? Okay. Is it a black body, a white body? Is it an athletic body? Then all the parts are part of that athletic body that's different from a geeky body or a healthy body, a diseased body. Uh, the body has a whole has its character, just like organizations have a culture, but each unit or each piece of that has its own cultural pieces as well. Okay. And they all have different functions, and one's not more or less necessary than another. So we need to understand that all the pieces of each organization that we're part of, every piece has a place, and we can't replace any of them. Okay, we need, but they all have the place within that. If I'm trying to if I'm trying to go join up with a church, a different organization of any kind, and try to impose myself on them, I'm like a cancer because that's not what fits. Okay, you need to be part of that body and fit in with that body with what that body is. You need to fit in with the different organizations in that. Now, what culture does, it gives people a sense of identity because then you know how to fit. Okay. And honestly, as individuals, we like to identify with the organizations we're part of. We feel comfortable being part of something bigger than ourselves. So if we create a strong culture, then we're giving people something to attach themselves to, and they honestly like that. It makes them feel comfortable. Makes them feel like they have a home. They have a better sense of who they are if they know what the organization they're part of is. Okay. If I know who I'm a part of, then I know something more about myself. Okay. Um, Now, Jesus said, "You shall be witnesses to me in Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria to the ends of the earth." A strong culture is especially important. Is especially helpful, put it that way. It's especially helpful in a flat or decentralized organization like most ministry organizations are. Okay. Uh, because then people can take off and do the as the tent ministry team goes out, they still have those same cultural standards when they go out, and they still function the same. They don't become something different and isolated when they leave, because that culture, the culture that has been embedded in them, that they are embedded in, goes with them when they go. So they understand who they are, what they do, what the expectations are, how to go about doing what they do. Okay. You don't have to micromanage them. Okay. A strong culture is really helpful for those kinds of things. A huge church, uh, large churches, culture is definitely critical, as the scriptures have already read, but still it's harder to do. It's harder to create a strong culture in a larger organization because you have so many different pieces that you're trying to hold together. Uh, uh, Another one for First Corinthians, to the Jew I became as a Jew that I might win the Jews. To those under the law, as under the law. To those without the law, as without the law. To the weak I became weak. I become all things to all men. Okay. A point I wanted to make here is that culture is affected by local culture. The culture of a church, the culture of a company, the culture of anything that you do, you create that within the organization, but it's also embedded, it's also part of a local culture. And so that's going to influence how you do what you do, because you've got different people. We'll talk more about this next week. People who come from different backgrounds and different mindsets, different ways of thinking and processing and working and acting together. You bring them together. So the organization culture is going to somewhat reflect that. Uh, One thing when I was in Costa Rica, I learned that American companies, there were a lot of American companies down there, but when they moved to Costa Rica, they really had to take a lot of effort to adapt how they worked and adapt their culture to the local Costa Rican culture. Okay. Costa Ricans will not work overtime if they can help it. It's not going to happen. And so organizations that like to work overtime, no, it's not going to happen. They're going to take the weekends off because that's family time. Okay. So local culture, we still have those common cultures that are an important part of the kingdom cultures: compassion, mercy, integrity, accountability, righteousness, holiness, those kinds of things. They're still important parts of the culture, but it adapts to fit into the local culture. Music is, as an example, speech patterns and how people talk, different legal systems, the natural resources and landscape, a lot of other things. They all affect how each individual organization operates in every different kind of a place. So you can't boilerplate because you learn a cultural thing in one place doesn't mean you can do exactly the same somewhere else. Okay. So like if a ministry came from the River Church in Tampa and tried to do exactly the same thing River does in Tampa and try to do that in Brisbane, it's not going to work very well. There's going to be some challenges to pull that together. Okay. The same core things are in place, but you've got to be able to work with the local culture as well. Now we don't have to try to be somebody that we're not. If I'm going to work in a different culture, I don't have when I was in Costa Rica, I didn't have to be a Costa Rican. But I had to understand and respect and reflect and work within that environment, work within that atmosphere. And I honestly made some really bad mistakes doing that. So there's some things didn't work at all. Um, there's a great line in the movie, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, an old John Wayne movie. An editor of a paper is interviewing Jimmy Stewart, and he says, "When the legend becomes fact, print the legend." Okay. So what I want to talk about some things we can do uh, to build a culture. Okay. Or some things that really feed a culture. One is just to have some heroes. And that's why we use this quote. Have some heroes, people who built the organization. Okay. Uh, People who founded it. the people who overcame problems, transformed people, helped transform an organization, had a massive impact, struggled through some things to get to a place of victory and overcoming things. Uh, we can use those people for patterns and their lifestyle can set the standards that kind of help communicate who we are. Okay. Rodney Howard Brown talks a lot about driving his car. And so he's not trying to get everybody to drive race cars. What he's doing is communicating some standards of kind of pushing the envelope and testing yourself and going beyond the simplest things and kind of laying your life out there. Um, some lore and stories, stories about the organization, some history helps people to understand and kind of carry those things on. We tell stories about separate situations like uh, what made the leader the leader. Okay, what did they come from? What kind of of challenges did people survive and things like that. Uh, Sometimes a logo, like the logo that Ignite uses, communicates something about who Ignite is. You know a little bit more about Ignite by seeing that logo and say, okay, that tells me something. Apple's Apple tells you something, you know. Amazon's little smiley A to Z arrow tells you something about what you expect when you deal with Amazon, everything from A to Z, and getting it to you with the arrow. Okay. Sometimes some common phrases. I've told you guys one time about a carpenter asked me, well, how are we going to do this job when it was a different kind of job from what we usually did? And because we usually did kind of high quality office buildings and things like that. And I said, well, we do chicken right. So instead of sort of cutting corners and focusing on efficiency and just kind of slapping it together, as people doing this kind of work might often do, we're not doing that. We're going to do it right. And so that communicated some cultural things that really helped people understand how to go about their work. Um, Sayings that people use over and over again. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. You know, people can put that as part of what the organization does and what their beliefs are. How the facilities are laid out, whether it's like an open offices or maybe some really opulent suites that the executives have, and how they're on the top floor and kind of look down on everybody else, kind of helps build a culture. How the leaders act, um, the people that you hire has an effect on it. You know, the intentional selection of people that fit a culture. Okay. Training newcomers, onboarding people to where when they come into an organization, people spend time with them to help them to understand what they're now a part of. The vision and the mission of an organization are very important for communicating and helping to build a culture. And then putting it all together into a package. And all those, there's several different things we can do to help build and communicate a culture within an organization. I'm kind of rushing here because I'm running out of time. Um, and he who observes the wind will not sow, he who regards the clouds will not reap. And what I'm doing here is a little shift. Organization culture, we've talked about that, kind of the personality, the atmosphere, and things we can do about that and what it does for us. There's another aspect called that people call climate, and you may hear that, but it's similar. But the key difference is climate is about how it affects me. Culture is about the nature of the organization, the atmosphere, and the personality of the organization as a whole. Climate is how that affects me. Okay. If it's a very collegial and supportive culture, but I might see it as people get favorable treatment that they didn't deserve, or kind of greasy grace. Yeah, you're just forgiving everybody else. They don't get what they deserve, and so and maybe I did something wrong, get cold in the carpet for it. So, um, or maybe the collegial and supportive culture makes me feel safe. So two different people can have a really different view of the same culture. So that's what the climate is. Okay. All right. I'm on overtime. So uh, I really appreciate you guys pitching in because that's why I'm running a little bit over because of you guys' contributions. But that's more valuable. That's what we're after is getting it out of the air into our hands and into our feet. Okay. So y'all ready to go?
Already.
Yes. Let me go. Let me out of here. Lord bless you guys. Have a great week and head on to the next one on your agenda for the day. Father, bless them, be with them this week, feed them, encourage them, strengthen their hearts, and open their eyes, new windows of revelation and insight to each one, I pray in Jesus' name. Blessings, guys.
Thank
Man.
you, Mike.